Hey, everybody, welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm going to share with you how to identify if some of the experiences you're having as an adult are linked to or caused by childhood complex PTSD or CPTSD for short. I have a lot of thoughts on this because I had a really rough childhood. And after my childhood, I ran away to the army as one does. And I got a career, I had a child, I got married, I did all these things that I thought I was supposed to do as a human, but I was really struggling. I would have bouts of deep depression and anxiety. And honestly, for me, it felt like everybody else knew how to do life, but I didn't. In those 20 plus years of, being out there as an adult doing life, I saw many therapists and many counselors. And because I was seeking help. I was seeking answers. I was, really crying out for help. I saw many of them and I would go in and I would pour out my heart and I would tell them all the things that happened to me, but not one of those therapists helped me see that I had walked through childhood trauma and that I needed to take my healing and recovery seriously. Not one of them ever mentioned the word complex trauma, CPTSD, childhood trauma. Not one of them ever mentioned that. And in their defense, complex PTSD is not even in the DSM as of today. And it wasn't recognized as a diagnosis by the WHO until 2018. So, in their defense, I know they were doing the best they could, but therapy and traditional talk therapy and counseling really didn't help me. I didn't even know that I had CPTSD until I was 41 years old, about 4 or 5 years ago. And the person who told me was a perfect stranger. So I might be that perfect stranger for you. And I hope that you find this helpful because they never really helped me put language to my experiences or link my adult experiences to my childhood. The only thing I was left with was believing that something must be terribly wrong with me. And that is toxic shame. So I was left with so much shame. And because of that, I didn't find the personal growth or personal development space until I was 36 years old. It took a rock bottom for me to finally wake up to something is absolutely going wrong in my life. And picture this. Let me share with you my rock bottom. I haven't shared that many times, but let me go ahead and share with you. So picture this. I am living in San Antonio. I just dropped my 12-year-old daughter off at the airport because she just told me that she wanted to move back with her dad after I recently decided I was going to get a divorce. I was finally going to leave my unhealthy, toxic relationship. And I dropped her off at the airport. And I don't want to share a lot of her experience because it's her experience and I really respect that. But I dropped her off. I'm up in my bathroom and I am on the ground. I am literally on the floor weeping and crying and like a hot mess. And I'm crying out to God. I am literally crying out to God and I am saying to God, what did I do wrong? I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. I was a good girl. I was kind to all human beings. I was known as the nice girl, and I tried to do better than my parents, and I was trying to give a better life to my daughter, and here I am. My daughter does not want to stay with me. The only way I could get through it back then was to numb with alcohol and food. I was deep in my coping mechanisms at the time. But it was that rock bottom that sent me into personal development and trying to learn, like, how do I actually, quote unquote, at the time, I wanted to fix myself. And I was trying to figure out how the hell I was going to fix myself. So it's been 10 years from that day. And I spent a lot of those 10 years spinning in personal development, motivational mindset, and thought work. And none of it, absolutely none of it, helped me heal complex trauma. So I hope that what I share today helps you identify complex trauma and also start your healing journey as well. Now I'm a trauma informed life coach and psychedelic guide, and my mission is to help you heal and break free from the imprints of trauma on your life as well. I recently renamed my channel Take It From Me because I made so many mistakes in life and also in my healing journey. And I want to make sure that I share all of those with you so you can learn from the wisdom that I've had to learn the hard way in life. On all accounts, I really shouldn't be here. I should be strung out on some sort of drug, under a bridge somewhere, or not even here, actually. And somehow I made it here. Somehow I made it right here in this on this couch talking to you. Somehow, by God grace, by the divine beloved universe, source, whatever you call God, I've made it here, and I feel like God has placed an assignment on my life, an assignment to share what I've learned, and so that way you don't have to spin your wheels in your life and waste years of your life trying to solve a riddle that people are not sharing with you how to solve. Okay, before we go forward, I want you to not get hung up on identifying and labeling and diagnosing yourself with complex PTSD or CPTSD. Don't even get hung up on that because honestly, and I recommend that you don't label yourself, you don't need to label yourself or identify as a complex PTSD survivor. It just doesn't serve us, to be honest. What I do care about is that you learn as much as you can about your inner psyche, your inner world, so that way you can create the life that you truly deserve. So here goes. Let's start with number one. Number one is toxic shame. I know we just talked about toxic shame. Toxic shame is the thing that steals so much of your life. Okay, now, as you're thinking about toxic shame in your life, here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about any coping mechanism that you have to deal with emotions and to deal with, to deal with emotions because as trauma survivors, we don't feel safe in our body. And when we're storing shame, I stored a lot of shame in my hips. We often turn to coping mechanisms that create more shame. So I want you to think about numbing behaviors that you might have. It could be overeating, binge eating, emotional eating, over drinking. If you have any addiction of any kind, that is a sign and symptom of complex PTSD. For me, I was an emotional eater and a binge eater my whole life. This happens because when we're little kids, little girls, we need nurturing from our parents. And when we don't get it, we find it in food. And so if you have any kind of numbing behaviors like that, it could be TV, porn, any kind of, it could be drugs. What it is that we're carrying shame, and shame comes from wounds like neglect and abandonment. When our earliest caregivers neglect us, abuse us, or abandon us, or aren't there to protect us, or when we don't get our needs met, sometimes the wound, the trauma is not getting what we needed growing up. The absence of those things, the nurturing, the safety. What happens in our little brain, in your little brain, you don't say like, "Oh my gosh, my parents are effed up." You don't say that. You say, "Oh my gosh, something must be wrong with me. Mom or dad is leaving me." My mother used to drop me off at people's homes. Maybe it was family, maybe it was friends. I don't quite remember exactly where, but she would drop me off and she would tell me that she would come back, and she wouldn't come back. I remember times holding on for dear life to her legs, begging her not to leave while she was putting makeup on. And she chose things like drugs, alcohol, men, partying over her children. And us children, we weren't like, oh, well, there must be something going on or something wrong with mom. We would think there must be something innately wrong with me. I must be better. I need to be a good girl. So I tried to be a really good girl, So I want you to think about some of the things that create shame in your life? When did you decide that you weren't good enough? Shame says, I'm not good enough. And so toxic shame runs our life. I also remember this might be a sign and symptom of shame for you. If you feel constricted in your body, like you can't dance in front of people, in my 20s when I was in the army, or early, like I was gonna say 18, 19, but you're not supposed to be drinking then, but I was, of course. But like during that time, I remember needing to have alcohol before I got to the club because if I got to the club and I wasn't a little buzzed, I wasn't gonna be able to drink. I mean, I wasn't gonna be able to dance. And so a friend of mine would drive and I would drink some shots on the way so I could be ready to dance, right? Also, another sign of shame for me was I couldn't have sex or intercourse with my ex-husband or partners for that matter in the past without drinking alcohol. So when you're thinking about toxic shame in your life, oftentimes when I work with people, they don't know they have shame. But if you have a not worthy enough wound, there's shame involved there. Okay, so that's number one, toxic shame. Number two, self-abandonment, aka people pleasing. This is often associated with the fawn response of the nervous system. Fawning is a social um, nervous system response where the way that we get our needs met, the way that we get safety, attention, acceptance as children is we become who our caregivers need us to be, who we think they need us to be, the nice girl, the good little boy, the good little girl. Sometimes it's I need to be out of the way. I need to have no needs. And the way this shows up in your adult life is you put everyone's needs before your own. You struggle to say no when you really mean no. You'll say yes when you want to say no. This often looks like I put all my family first and I don't have time for my own needs. And when we self-abandon so much, I literally became a chameleon. In my life, I thought if I'm who everyone else needs me to be, then I'll be safe, then I'll be loved, then I'll be worthy. And the problem with that, and the problem with self-abandonment is you don't know who you are. You wake up as an adult and you're like, who am I? Here's a couple of signs for you. If people ask you what you want, but you have no idea, it could be as easy as, what do you want for dinner? You have no idea. You're self-abandoning. You are fawning. You are people-pleasing because you think that other people's wants and desires are more important than yours, so you never even ask yourself what you want. One of the things I struggled with the most after I started my healing journey was asking and answering myself, what do I want? When somebody would ask me, what do I think? I literally would freeze. My nervous system would freeze. So if that sounds like something you experience, you can just put a check mark by number two. All right, number three, cycles of depression and or anxiety. So if you experience either one or both, there's a chance that you have complex PTSD. So depression for me, I had what I would call functional depression. I could go to work. I was a supervisor for the military for a long time. I could handle stressful environments. That's sometimes what we're really good at trauma survivors. It feels like it's normal to be in stress and anxiety and chaos. And I could survive that. I could access the fight response quite a bit in my 20s and 30s, but then I would crash. So as soon as I would get home, I'd crash on the couch. It looked like for me watching the recorded episodes of all my soap operas, General Hospital for sure, I never missed an episode, and drinking vodka on my couch, and sometimes getting stuck there. And yes, this can happen with regular stress from work. It can totally happen, but it's something that you can't get yourself out of. And then that would turn into weekends where if I was going through a cycle of depression, I would spend weekends in bed while my family was living life. and I couldn't get out of bed, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me or why I felt so depressed. It kind of felt like I have everything that one might want in life, but I'm so depressed, and I just couldn't get out of it. And then fast forward in my life, it looked like completely numbing with social media. And another thing I want to say about depression and or anxiety is that you may not experience it for periods of your life, and then at some point in your life it could be triggered. So this happened for me with anxiety. I didn't feel so much anxiety as I did depression in my 20s and early 30s. Now, in my late 30s and 40s, I experienced a lot of anxiety that showed up as fear. So after my divorce, I lived alone for a long time, and I used to sleep with a knife, like a little sheath knife. My brother had given it to me. He was like, "You can when you walk to the gym, you can carry this," and I did, but then I started sleeping with it. I was scared of the dark. I used to always look under my bed and in my closet before I went to bed, and this is in my own home. So what happens with, complex trauma survivors is your earliest years, your nervous system is developed. And you can have stored, fear in the body, and you can have stored trauma, emotional flashbacks. Your body holds on to it. There's this book called The Body Keeps the Score, and I'm going to share with you a book in just a minute that I want you to read for CPTSD, more awareness around this. The Body Keeps the Score is a little bit of a hard read. I wouldn't say to start there, but if you're really curious about complex trauma, I'm going to give you a book in just a minute to take a look at, to add to your education right now. But I used to carry a knife, and I did that for a long time, and part of my healing path led me to psychedelics, and in many of my psychedelic experiences, fear was the thing we were working on, and, fear, paranoia, things like that were the things that were coming up for me, and I had so much of it, and I didn't realize that my brain was just projecting stories into the future, creating so much anxiety and fear, and it makes so much sense because my earliest years of my life were chaotic, unstable, and unsafe, but a lot of times we don't understand it. We're like, "Why am I so anxious? Why do I have anxiety all the time?" And so we go to a doctor and they give us a pill. And then the only way, that we can do anything about this anxiety is if we have that pill. And, I really want you to know that there's other ways, to support yourself through anxiety, and in a future video, I'll make an anxiety video to help. But I learned that cycles of anxiety and depression that come and go, and they're here with you all your adult life. They're definitely a sign that complex PTSD is alive for you in your life. All right, number 4, hair triggered nervous system responses. I'm going to say fight or flight, and let's talk about disassociation and memory loss because I've already talked about fawning and freezing. Okay, so fight or flight. All of us human beings, we're meant to go through the cycles or the waves of our nervous system responses. So we're supposed to have healthy responses of flight. Like somebody might want to flee or take a flight response if we actually need to get out of here, right? That's pretty healthy. But then we usually come back to a more regulated, safe state once we do that. Same with fight response. But when you have experienced complex PTSD, we can get, um, I won't say stuck. Yes, we can get stuck, but I'm talking about those times that you would describe as having a short fuse. I would always say that. I was trying to be a really good mom. I had read all the books about how to be a good mom and all these things, but I had a short fuse, and it was because I had dysregulated nervous system and I would like pop off into fight or flight constantly. Another thing that I struggled with was disassociation. A lot of people describe disassociation as kind of like where you have this sense that you're like out of your body and kind of like watching your experience from on top or on the side of yourself. And you almost like leave your experience here on earth, which can cause a lot of memory loss. I had a ton of memory loss. I had the short-term memory loss, and I also had long-term memory loss. And so if you have memory loss, like you can't remember a lot of your childhood that maybe you think you should. You don't remember the traumatic events, and you also don't, side note, you don't have to remember them to heal them. But you don't remember certain periods of your childhood. You don't remember even the good times, even though you know there was sprinkled in some good times, but you know you had kind of a mess up childhood, but you don't remember them. Another thing is I kinda lived the way I describe how it felt to be me as an adult was I felt like I had these blinders on, like I was in a turtle shell, and I was, like, almost kinda, like, not wanting to be seen, "Don't look at me," and I had, like, this, like, shield over my heart. I wanted to keep everyone out, complete isolation. And so I wouldn't it was hard for me to focus on anything that was outside of my lived experience and my close family, meaning if something important happened in the world, I could completely forget it. It was almost like I wasn't there and I don't know what you're talking about. I'd watch movies, and then a couple weeks later, not remember the movie name. I would um, find myself I would call it disconnected. I felt disconnected from my family, from my ex-husband, from my daughter. I always felt disconnected. So if you feel disconnected and you feel like you're not present, that could be a sign as well of disassociation. Um, when we were children, we our nervous system did what it took to survive. So if we needed to disassociate to survive a trauma, we can often stay in that place. I remember the first time that I disassociated, I literally remember it because it happened during an assault. And I never really understood after that it was still showing up. I didn't realize it was disassociation. I used to think that, like, I just have a terrible memory or I have a hard time remembering or listening. Even in conversation with people, I would struggle to remember what they just said. And it was because I really struggled to be in the present moment in my body. And that's definitely a sign of complex trauma. So let's see. I have some notes here because, like I just said, like my memory is not the best. Okay. All right. So let me share with you this book. This book was the book that I got right after a perfect earth angel stranger told me that what I was experiencing in my life was complex PTSD. So I bought this book. It's called Complex PTSD From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Now, Pete Walker, he's a therapist and he has been a therapist for a long time, and he's also a CPTSD survivor. Now, there's a list of symptoms and there's a list of like how to heal and how to make sense of your experience. And once I identified and read this book, it helped me, it validated my life experience. And I think sometimes we just need validation of like, I'm not crazy and nothing's really truly innately wrong with me. My body just experienced, my mind, my body, my brain. I experienced complex trauma and developmental trauma, and this is where I need to go to heal. So I highly suggest you get this book. And I'm going to share this last symptom with you, this last sign and symptom, number 5. I didn't see it in the book, but let's talk about it because it's something that I really struggled with as an adult, and it's control. Trying to control everything around me to keep us all safe. I tried to control so many things in my life. If I think about it, I tried to control the whole experience of my daughter. I remember getting up every night going to check on her because I was deathly afraid that what happened to me would happen to her. I didn't let her have sleepovers. Even kids coming to our house, I couldn't sleep well because I was worried that they would try to touch her inappropriately, and I was deathly afraid, so there was anxiety there, and that's pretty, like, dark control, but let's talk about even the things you wouldn't think are control. Like, I remember trying to control what my daughter wore so she wouldn't have any, like, people wouldn't talk about her, and then they wouldn't think I'm a bad mom, if she wore hoodies every day to school, or, I wanted to control how her hair looked because, if she didn't have her hair done properly, then people might think I'm a bad mom. I just tried to control every single thing in life, and I also tried to control this. One of the reasons why I stayed with her father, because I had, left her father when she was younger, and I went back because I wanted my daughter to have both parents. And because I wanted her the story goes is that I wanted her to have both parents because I didn't have both parents, and having both parents must be better and all this stuff. And then in the end, what happened was I spent 10 years in a no contact, estranged relationship with my daughter. And here's the thing. The ego, our wounds, thinks it convinces us that if we just control everything, we'll be safe. I had a client recently tell me that she wanted to control her grandchild's ability to read because she was worried that she was going to be judged at school. And I get that. But she was putting so much pressure on herself and so much pressure on her grandchild. And the thing is that we cannot control everything. And we also have this idea that we're supposed to keep ourselves and other people from feeling uncomfortable emotions, and we just cannot control everything. And one of the hardest things as a childhood complex trauma survivor is that you most likely experienced things in your life where your caregivers were supposed to protect you, especially at a young age. But because they didn't, we didn't develop trust that we would be taken care of. So, as an adult, in my experience is, and I'm working on this still today, I'm working on this, is trusting that I'm divinely protected, that there's somebody outside of me or some being outside of me that's protecting me. And the truth is, there's no way I'd be sitting in front of you right now if I hadn't been protected this whole time. But it's really challenging because we didn't develop that capability of trusting anyone outside of us. So I really hope that these 5 signs and symptoms help you. There are many more in this book. I just gave you a list of a few. And there's another sign and symptom that I want to share with you that is in this book, and that is having a toxic, incessant inner critic. And if you found this video helpful, you're definitely going to want to watch this video because in this video, I share with you how to heal your inner critic. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode.